The autumn of 1980 brought with it a darkness that would settle over the small Northern California community of Cedar Valley like a shroud. For dedicated nuns had vanished from St. Dina's Chapel as if the earth itself had swallowed them whole, leaving behind only questions and a grief that time seemed powerless to heal. Nearly 3 decades would pass before Father Marcus Delacroix would uncover the terrible truth that had been buried beneath their feet all along. Chapter 1, The Memorial. Colored light danced through the ancient stained glass of St. Catherine's Catholic Church as Father Marcus concluded the memorial service. His voice carried the weight of years as he spoke the final blessing. May their souls, through God's infinite mercy, find eternal rest, he intoned, his weathered hand tracing the sign of the cross above the assembled congregation. Amen, came the unified response, though the word seemed to hang heavy in the air. Father Marcus surveyed the faces before him, most bearing the lines that come with age, others showing the weariness of middle years. All had gathered to remember 4 women who had dedicated their lives to God, only to disappear without explanation exactly 28 years earlier. As the service concluded, Father Marcus positioned himself at the church entrance, greeting each departing parishioner. The condolences offered had taken on a ritualistic quality over the years, the sharp edge of fresh grief worn smooth by repetition. "Father, thank you for keeping their memory alive," said Mrs. Patterson, pressing her spotted hands into his. "Sister Catherine used to help my grandchildren with their reading." The priest nodded, feeling the familiar ache in his chest. Sister Catherine Rodriguez had been 65 when she vanished, along with Sister Margaret O'Brien, 69, Sister Lucia Santos, 31, and the youngest, Sister Teresa Delacroix, his own blood sister, just 25 years old. As the last person departed, Father Marcus walked slowly back through the empty church to his modest office. Alone at last, the composed facade he maintained for others crumbled. He sank into his chair and buried his face in his hands. "Why, Lord," he whispered into the silence, "I've served you faithfully all these years. Teresa gave her life to you completely. Why haven't you shown me what happened to them?" After several minutes, he composed himself and opened his desk's bottom drawer. Inside lay a small wooden box containing photographs preserved with loving care. The first showed Teresa on the day she took her final vows, her young face radiant with purpose beneath her habit. Setting aside Teresa's photograph, he reached for the last known image of all 4 missing nuns. They sat together on a wooden bench outside the modest St. Dina's Chapel, positioned near the edge of Shasta National Forest. A local hiker had taken the picture just days before the nuns disappeared during their spiritual retreat. Father Marcus stared at the image, his mind performing calculations he'd done countless times before. Sister Catherine would be 93 now, Sister Margaret 97. Even if they had somehow survived, they would be ancient and frail. But Lucia would be 59 and Teresa 53, still potentially in their prime years. He remembered the frantic weeks following their disappearance. Police had scoured the forest extensively, but not a single clue had emerged. The 4 women had simply vanished into thin air. As he continued studying the image, his gaze drifted to the chapel visible in the background. Something tugged at Father Marcus's heart as he examined the building. He hadn't visited St. Dina's in over 15 years, finding the memories too painful. But now, on this anniversary, he felt a strange compulsion to see it again. Perhaps it was mere sentimentality, or perhaps there was still something to be discovered there. Father Marcus carefully returned the photographs to their box, except for the one of the 4 nuns, which he slipped into his breast pocket. Chapter 2, The Journey. The winding road from Cedar Valley to Shasta National Forest carried Father Marcus through changing landscapes. The 90-minute journey gave him ample time for reflection as tall pines and redwoods crowded the roadside. When he reached what he believed to be the location of St. Dina's Chapel, confusion washed over him. Instead of the simple dirt path he remembered, he found a paved private road blocked by an ornate gate. "No trespassing" signs were prominently displayed. "This can't be right," he muttered, consulting the photograph. The distant mountains matched, as did the arrangement of taller trees on the ridgeline. This was definitely the correct location. But where was St. Dina's Chapel? Father Marcus approached the gate on foot. Beyond it, he could see the private road stretching into the forest, but there was no sign of the white chapel building. Instead, the area appeared to have been extensively landscaped. Bewildered, he called Samuel Crawford, the longtime caretaker of St. Dina's. "Father Marcus, it's been quite some time," came the gruff voice. "Samuel, I'm standing at what I believe to be the entrance to St. Dina's, but the chapel appears to be gone." "That's right, Father. The diocese decommissioned the chapel years ago. It was sold in 1982 to a man named Victor Blackwood. He had it demolished." Father Marcus felt a chill. "I never heard anything about the chapel being sold. After what happened with the nuns, attendance dropped off. Then there was that incident with the bell tower nearly collapsing. The bishop decided it wasn't worth maintaining." After receiving directions to a public road near Blackwood's property, Father Marcus thanked Samuel and drove toward what he hoped would be answers. 20 minutes later, he found himself approaching an impressive structure, 3 stories of natural stone and timber that spoke of considerable wealth. Father Marcus parked and approached the imposing residence with determination and apprehension. The door opened almost immediately, revealing a tall, lean man in his 60s. His expression shifted to unmistakable displeasure as he registered Father Marcus's clerical attire. "Yes," he asked, not bothering to hide his impatience. "Good afternoon. Are you Mr. Victor Blackwood?" "My name is Father Marcus Delacroix from St. Catherine's Church in Cedar Valley." "I am, and you're trespassing on private property. I apologize for arriving unannounced. I visited the site where St. Dina's chapel used to stand, and I was surprised to find it gone. If you already saw it's not there, why come bothering me?" Blackwood's voice carried an edge that was almost a growl. "I simply wanted to understand the circumstances. The chapel held personal significance for me." Blackwood seemed momentarily mollified, though his expression remained cold. "Well, now you know. It's gone, and good riddance. I sleep better now that I don't have to hear that blasted bell ringing 3 times a day. The Angelus bell is a beautiful tradition, Mr. Blackwood. It calls the faithful to prayer and honors the incarnation of Christ." "Oh, spare me the sermon," Blackwood scoffed. "People can set alarms on their phones if they need reminding to pray." Recognizing the futility of continuing, Father Marcus nodded. "Very well. Thank you for your time, Mr. Blackwood. Peace be with you." Blackwood's only response was to shut the door firmly in his face. Chapter 3, The Calling. As Father Marcus drove away from Blackwood's estate, he found himself taking the road that would pass near the former site of the chapel. He couldn't explain the compulsion, but something drew him back in that direction. Suddenly, the car's radio crackled to life, emitting a strange, haunting sound. Father Marcus started, his hands tightening on the steering wheel. The sound was unmistakable, Gregorian chant, the ancient ethereal music of monastic worship. But the radio was off. Father Marcus pulled to the side of the road and stared at the silent radio in bewilderment. The chanting continued for several seconds, then faded away as abruptly as it had begun. Had he imagined it? Yet as he sat there, a peculiar sensation washed over him, the same feeling he had experienced while looking at the photograph in his office. A tugging at his heart, an inexplicable certainty that he was meant to be here for a purpose he did not yet understand. Once more, the faint chanting emanated from the silent radio, and this time Father Marcus was certain he wasn't imagining it. Without fully understanding his own actions, he executed a U-turn and drove back toward the gate that blocked access to the former chapel site. Chapter 4, The Discovery. Father Marcus parked near the gate marking the entrance to Blackwood's property. After a moment of prayer and hesitation, he began walking along the perimeter fence, seeking a vantage point from which to view the former chapel site. As he walked, his foot suddenly caught on an exposed tree root, sending him stumbling forward. The momentum caused his weight to press against a weakened section of fence, which gave way with a sharp crack, creating a gap large enough to squeeze through. "Forgive me," he whispered, crossing himself before carefully stepping through the gap onto Blackwood's property. Father Marcus moved cautiously toward the former chapel site. The area had been landscaped with ornamental plants, and nothing remained to indicate that a place of worship had ever existed here. As he stood contemplating this, a flash of reflected light caught his eye. Something near the ground, partially hidden by decorative shrubbery. Moving closer, he parted the branches to reveal a metal grate set into the earth, an old, weathered air vent with ornate scrollwork. As he leaned closer, a sound drifted up through the grate, soft, melodic humming followed by what sounded distinctly like a human cough. Father Marcus's blood ran cold. Someone was below ground, beneath what had once been St. Dina's chapel. Drawing his cell phone, Father Marcus dialed 911 with trembling hands. 911, what's your emergency? My name is Father Marcus Delacroix. I'm at Victor Blackwood's property near the former St. Dina's chapel. I believe someone may be trapped underground. I can hear singing and coughing coming from an air vent. After providing his location, Father Marcus was instructed to wait by his vehicle until officers arrived. He took one last look at the mysterious air vent, where occasional sounds of movement could still be heard. Chapter 5, The Investigation. Within an hour, Father Marcus found himself at the gate with Samuel Crawford and two sheriff's deputies, Deputy Williams and Deputy Carter. After explaining the situation, the four men made their way to the air vent. This is old craftsmanship, Deputy Williams observed, examining the grate. Doesn't match the modern landscaping. The men fell silent, straining to hear any sound from below. Then, faintly but distinctly, a woman's voice began to hum a haunting melody that Father Marcus recognized as Salve Regina, the Marian antiphon sung in convents for centuries. The humming faded, replaced by labored breathing and a dry, rasping cough. That's definitely someone down there, Deputy Carter said grimly. And from the sound of that cough, they may need medical attention. The officers confronted Blackwood at his house, but he refused to cooperate, claiming the grate was merely part of a drainage system. When pressed about the sounds, he became increasingly agitated and demanded they leave his property. This isn't over, Deputy Williams told Father Marcus quietly. I'm going to get a warrant. Something's not right here. Chapter 6, The Truth Revealed. Hours later, armed with an emergency warrant, police returned to Blackwood's property. Father Marcus and Samuel watched from a distance as officers searched the main house before moving to the grounds. In a storage shed along the private road, officers discovered loose floorboards concealing a stone staircase descending into darkness. Below, they found a heavy wooden door locked with an ancient iron key hidden in the wall. Through his body camera feed, Father Marcus watched in horror as officers entered what appeared to be a crude underground chamber. A frail, elderly woman lay on a thin mattress, clutching a hand-carved wooden rosary. Ma'am, Deputy Williams said gently, I'm Deputy Williams from the Sheriff's Department. Can you tell me your name? The woman's cracked lips moved with visible effort. Sister Teresa. Teresa Delacroix. In the car, Father Marcus gasped, tears springing to his eyes. My sister. It's my sister. The chamber was lined with religious carvings, crosses and biblical scenes carved from scraps of wood and stone. In a dark corner, officers discovered human remains, the skeletal remains of another victim, partially covered with a tattered blanket. Lucia, Sister Teresa whispered when asked about others. She went to God, many years ago. As paramedics carefully carried Sister Teresa toward the ambulance, Father Marcus was permitted to see her. Despite the ravages of time and suffering, he recognized his sister in those eyes, eyes that had once sparkled with youthful devotion. Her lips moved, and though no sound emerged, Father Marcus could read the words she formed, God never left me. Officers also discovered Victor Blackwood's journal, filled with decades of hatred toward the Catholic Church and detailed accounts of his crimes. The journal revealed his twisted motivations, childhood abandonment by a mother who became a nun, and abuse by a strict Catholic grandmother, that had festered into a pathological hatred of religious women. Epilogue. As the ambulance carried Sister Teresa toward the hospital, sirens wailing, Father Marcus followed with a heart too full for words. The mystery that had haunted Cedar Valley for 28 years was finally solved, but at a terrible cost. 3 sisters had perished in that underground prison, Sisters Catherine, Margaret, and Lucia, victims of one man's twisted hatred. Only Teresa had survived, sustained by an unshakable faith that had endured through nearly 3 decades of darkness. Victor Blackwood was led away in handcuffs, his reign of terror finally ended. As he passed Father Marcus, he spat at the priest in one final act of defiance. Father Marcus wiped his face calmly, his voice steady as he replied, "I count it for joy that I have suffered like my Lord." The miraculous discovery would bring both closure and new challenges. Teresa faced a long road to recovery, but she was alive, a testament to the power of faith to sustain the human spirit even in the darkest circumstances. In the days that followed, Father Marcus would learn the full extent of his sister's ordeal and Blackwood's methodical planning. But on this night, as he followed the ambulance through the darkness, he could only marvel at the mysterious ways in which God had finally led him to his sister after 28 years of searching. The bells of St. Catherine's would ring out in celebration when news of the rescue reached Cedar Valley. After decades of silence, the lost sisters of St. Dina's had finally been found, 3 in eternal rest, and 1 miraculously delivered back to the light.